Vanessa, let me welcome you to the program. If you want to comment on any of this, please do. But then come on to what is the Abraham Shield?
Yes, I'll probably keep to extra because I'm so flabbergasted by Britain's. I don't know what to call it anymore. I mean, it's just idiocy. But anyway, let's come on to the madness that's ongoing in this region. And this is something that I wanted to draw people's attention to because at UK Column, we've been talking for a long time about what the direction of travel is, what the end game is. And this lays it out very nicely. This is a newly formed since October the 7th, the Coalition for Regional Security. And basically, this was established about a year after October the 7th and represents, a wide and diverse group of public figures and opinion leaders in the security, diplomacy, business, high-tech and research field who joined together to ensure the security of the State of Israel through the promotion of the Abraham Shield Plan. And of course, we know that that's an extension of the Abraham Accords that were established by Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, back under Trump's first administration. And then just looking through at the About Us section, with crisis comes opportunity, a new regional order in the Middle East. And of course, this is the new Middle East that has been spoken about for decades, even going back to the Clean Break Doctrine in 1997. But I really, this document is quite shocking in how clearly it lays out the plans of the Abraham Alliance, which of course we'll come on to, but is headed by the US and Israel. And clearly Trump has been brought in to carry this plan through. So the State of Israel has been dealing with 7 different fronts that form the Iranian, of course. No one else has any problem with the State of Israel in the region at all. The Iranian Ring of Fire that seeks to destroy Israel. And then moving on, we have also the new regional order. And this is why Iran turned Gaza into Hamas, southern Lebanon into Hezbollah-stan, built militias in Iraq and Syria, and strengthened the Houthis, aka Ansarullah, in Yemen. It is why Iran is trying to infiltrate Jordan, the West Bank, and Egypt. And I've paraphrased a little bit there, while at the same time implementing its nuclear program. So this is the nub of the matter. Of course, it's always been the biggest problem for Israel that Iran may develop some kind of nuclear capability, while of course Israel has clandestinely been producing its own nuclear capability for decades without the knowledge even of the United States. So if we actually go through the plan itself, as I said, it lays it out very clearly. This is part 1, those 6 steps to the plan. Closing the front in Gaza, which is very much what we said when Trump was elected, when the so-called ceasefire was brought in. It was very clear that that was the closing of this file and the pivot to the next stage, returning all hostages, establishing a technocratic transitional government in Gaza, and a regionally led de-Hamasification. Try and say that quickly. And you're getting the idea of the actual lexicon used in this plan, which for me is absolutely disgusting. It's reducing the Palestinians, the political national identity of the Palestinians down to these derogatory terms. And so part 1, again, closing the front in Gaza, returning all hostages. Arab police forces, Western reconstruction package. So it's harnessing the normalized Arab states under the Abraham Accords to police Gaza and have military presence in Gaza, and the US and the West to actually rebuild Gaza. And of course, we know that the vision for that is this free trade zone, this kind of Dubaiification of Gaza and of Palestine, and the theft of Palestinian gas. This has already pretty much been approved by the UAE. The envoy to Washington claims no alternative to ethnic cleansing of Gaza. So he's already put his stamp on the Trump Take Gaza plan. But Saudi Arabia is also sort of a little bit coming forward now. About a year ago, even while Palestinians were being genocided by the Zionists, the Saudi Crown Prince said publicly that he personally doesn't care about the Palestinian issue. And back in, I think it was 2023, so 1 year before that, on the September the 11th, 2023, he publicly stated, "This is Saudi's war. This is my war. I am not going to die until I see the Middle East at the forefront of the world." So the battle lines are being very clearly drawn. And within this document, that is made even clearer to a large extent. Now, this is fascinating. We've been talking about the correlation between what the Israelis have been doing to the Palestinians for years and what has been happening in the West with CBDC, central digital surveillance, and so on. And guess what? It's actually now included in the Abraham Shield, still under the section of 01. Cash in the Gaza Strip will be abolished. Zero cash. So we don't even have kind of zero everything else. We now have zero cash. And an advanced mechanism of monetary supervision will be implemented. So you can guess what that is. If you're not going to submit to occupation, if you're not going to accept Israeli oppression, if you're not going to accept living in a concentration camp reduced even further down from what Gaza already is, then you won't receive any cash. That's basically the bottom line there. And then I think if we move on to the second section, implementing and enforcing the agreement in southern Lebanon. So Lebanon then is getting pulled into this entire plan through a zero violation. Now, since the ceasefire that came into effect on the 26th of January, Israel has violated that more than 1,400 times, 1,400 times. And actually, since they agreed to some degree to withdraw from Lebanon on the 18th, they've already today assassinated a mayor of one of the villages in the south on the border with Israel, targeting his car with a drone. So if we're talking about zero violations, and very important, strengthening the Lebanese army. So this becomes very clear that where the Lebanese army has been pulled in to replace Hezbollah in the south of Lebanon, now Israel is clearly saying Israel is going to be strengthening the Lebanese army. So what does this mean? The Lebanese army becomes a proxy of Israel in Lebanese territory on the border and occupying the border towns of the southern Lebanese people, right? And because it's not only Hezbollah who live in the south, there are Christians, there are Sunnis, there are multiple sects and faiths down in southern Lebanon also. And remember that the US has already been sponsoring the Lebanese army in order to keep it absolutely toothless and unable to respond to Israel anyway. 03, part of the Shield plan, following the fall of the Assad regime, harnessing regional forces to stabilize Syria and turn it into a buffer against the Iranian axis. So this becomes clear now why Syria it was absolutely essential that Syria should fall. It also talks about continued occupation of the Golan territories, but that, of course, also means the territory in southern Syria that it now has annexed, and it is busy building military posts, increased now up to more than 9. It will prevent the arms coming into Lebanon to the resistance if they want to defend themselves against the Israeli violations of any ceasefire agreement. And they're going to enlist, this is the actual wording of the document, US administration to prevent Iran regaining a presence inside Syria. And they will work with Turkey, which they consider to be central to keeping order. And of course, that has been in place since 1993 with the security accord between Turkey and Israel, where they can use their Turkish territory to spy on the regional countries. And then if we move on to 04, which is basically to expand and deepen moderate regional coalition. That's what I was talking about, the Gulf states, the Sunni Islamic states predominantly, that are very much, of course, under the control of the US and the British, returning to a fast-track normalization with Saudi Arabia and expanding the Abraham Accords. So what does this mean? Of course, it means greater Israel. It means Israel is going to expand through its alliances and collaboration and entrapment of those Gulf states and other states like Jordan, for example, who are already, and Egypt, who are very much under the control of the West and Israel. And 05, which is basically the blockade plan, as they call it, implementing a blockade plan against Iran and preventing its nuclearization. So again, we're back to the hub of the issue. And then moving on to, this is where the wording just becomes extraordinary. The last section of the document, an Israeli declaration of gradual, responsible, secure path of separation from the Palestinians within a decade. So gone is the two-state solution. That doesn't even exist in this document. One-state solution is in the bin. Two-state solution is gone. And instead, you have part of a comprehensive regional agreement to basically squeeze the Palestinians out and to give Israel supremacy in the region. And then moving on again, we have again, back on the separation issue. So they say with the implementation of reforms and the fulfillment of the conditions of separation, the Palestinians will join the Abraham Alliance. So basically, when they've been indoctrinated, when they've been forced out of any form of resistance and basically declawed from a Palestinian political identity or even a national identity, freedom for Israel to bomb whenever they feel that there is any kind of infraction, a complete demilitarization, they'll be allowed to join the Abraham Alliance, which will prevent the infiltration of Iranian influence on Israel's borders. Not Hamastan, rather Abrahamistan. I mean, this is a very chilling document. Of course, the resistance are not going to allow this to happen. The Yemenis have already come out publicly to say that if Israel or the US try to displace the Gazans, they will actually directly enter into conflict with both countries. And so we're really heading, if we follow the direction and travel, and we have been saying at UK Column that this is coming, we're heading for a very dangerous precipice of regional and potentially global war.
Thank you, Vanessa. And on top of that, no, it's never too far away that the net zero CBDC technocratic policy is there as well, which is quite incredible. Let's welcome Vanessa back. And Vanessa, what's going on in your neck of the woods in Lebanon at the moment? Actually, Vanessa's not. Are you there?
I am here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So let's go with Lebanon.
Yes. First of all, I just wanted to remind people this is the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon. Something I can't remember how many football pitches it is, but it's vast. It's a garrison, 5,000 employees. The only bigger one is in Iraq, which of course has been colonized by the US for more than 30 years. It's a military center headquarters on one of the highest hills above the city of Beirut. So just to put everything into context about what I'm going to be talking about. And of course, yesterday was the end of the ceasefire. Although Israel has withdrawn from the majority of the areas in the south, of course, they've continued both to violate before and after the actual withdrawal. And they maintained their occupation in 5 key areas, which we've been talking about. Which are the 5 main hills. If you just move on to the actual map, the little red triangles are quite small, but you can freeze the screen and then be able to see them. But all the areas in red are basically the high points and strategic points in southern Lebanon, where Israel has not only maintained a presence, but is now, of course, building military footprint, and that is ongoing. Now, what has also been extraordinary, we're heading towards the funeral of the assassinated Syed Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, who was killed in an appalling way, using about 80 bombs to target his area, of course, killing multiple civilians during the attack, and potentially having used a tactical nuke because depleted uranium has been identified in the area where Syed Nasrallah was killed. So bearing in mind, we're heading on the 23rd for this funeral. 1.5 million to 2 million people are expected to attend the funeral. Guess what? The Israel suddenly tells the US that they must block an Iranian flight returning from Tehran to Beirut after Israel claimed that the IRGC was smuggling cash on civilian planes. So we have a very familiar story here. And in fact, it was Lebanese civilians who were turned back and had to return to Tehran after a spiritual visit to Tehran. And of course, what happened then, there were mass protests, and these protests were not only from Hezbollah, they were from Lebanese civilians who said, we're not going to be dictated to who can land at our airport by Israel and the United States. This is a sovereign country. And here you have a protester at the International Airport Road holds up a sign saying the road towards the airport is not Israeli. And eventually what happened is the Lebanese army fired on the protesters, both using live ammunition and tear gas. And of course, that infuriated people even more, because for how long the Lebanese army has been allowing the Israelis to target Lebanese civilians in the south and has not intervened at all. And case in question is 13-year-old Khadija Atwi. Here she is with the photo of her father, who was martyred in the last war. She's 13 years old. She was hit by an Israeli sniper in her cheek in Hula, one of the villages close to the borderline with the occupied Palestinian territories. And as her sister said in a report to Al Mayadeen, if we can just have the next slide, please. On February the 16th, Israel occupation forces opened fire on and killed 13-year-old Khadija Atwi in Hula. But what they don't mention is that they left her to bleed out. Moments before her murder, she told her sister, I miss my dad and want to visit his grave. A minute later, a bullet struck her cheek, an injury her sister says shouldn't have been fatal. In an interview with Mayadeen, one of her sisters revealed that the Israeli occupation forces arrived in civilian jeeps in an obvious attempt at deceiving Hula's residents before opening fire at them. Her sisters also denounced the Lebanese government's failure to act swiftly, saying that if the Lebanese army had received orders to, just like the ones they were given on the airport road, if they had fired tear gas at the Israeli enemy, they could have saved the child who died, as I said, from basically bleeding out. And then again, it was exposed this week by Dr. Elias Jaradar, who's one of the ophthalmologists dealing with the hideous pager attacks that blinded and maimed multiple civilians in southern Lebanon last year. The US sanctions at that time were imposed deliberately to ban the import of corneas needed for eye surgeries. So the actual suffering, if you remember, they cancelled flights, evacuating people outside of Lebanon for treatment. And to add to the injury, now Air France and Emirates have suspended their flights to Beirut on February the 23rd. So this can only be seen as a vindictive campaign to prevent people being able to peacefully honor the loss of one of the most important figures in Lebanon.
Thank you for that, Vanessa. Thank you. We'll talk more about that in extra, I'm quite sure.